Hello, welcome back, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. I know I'm about 5 pounds heavier, and I'm sure you guys are too, but I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and let's just get into it today. So I'm going to start kind of playing with the format of these videos. So today's the more political discussion. I want to try to lead off with a couple of short, brief headlines. It's more so just to kind of give you a heads up, and they are things that I might dig into a little bit in depth in the future, but we'll see. It's just kind of the things happening within the last week or so. But today's main topic is Christians should vote. If you call yourself a Christian in the United States in the year of our Lord 2025, I firmly believe you should be politically active, at the very least going out and voting. I think it's your civic duty. I think it's how you love your neighbor. We'll get into those reasons here in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about a couple of things that are happening right now. So first of all, if you guys aren't on X, formerly known as Twitter, they recently made the decision to reveal the countries of origin of the accounts there. Specifically, you can now see, for the most part, I've seen a couple exceptions. You can now see where the app was downloaded from, at least what country's app store, and then you can see where they are operating from. Now, some people can kind of mess with this using VPNs, but if you get both of those pieces of information, there's a good chance you've got a good idea where that particular account is from. And this is making waves, particularly in the political commentary world, because a large number of accounts are now revealed to be that regularly comment and post on American politics are now revealed to be foreigners. So I don't have any specific examples off the top of my head, but I did see lots from India, from Canada, from Nigeria. That's just my own, what I was seeing. I'm sure there's a lot more. I don't know what the actual breakdown is as far as, what countries were the most influential. Didn't expect this from X, to be honest, with Mr. Elon's history of defending H-1B and other foreign worker programs. But a surprise to be sure, but a pleasant one. So definitely a big thumbs up there. And then the second story that we've got, unfortunately 2 days ago, if you guys haven't heard, 2 National Guardsmen were shot in D.C. The gunman, first of all, before we get to the gunman, so both of these soldiers come from the West Virginia National Guard. Sadly, Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who's only 20 years old, has already passed, and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf of the West Virginia Air National Guard. So Specialist Beckstrom, she was Army National Guard, and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, he is Air National Guard. He is still in critical condition and is still fighting, so just pray for the families, pray especially for the young man who's still alive, that he is able to make a swift recovery, and he's able to pull through. The gunman, and this is probably something we'll talk about in the future. He was an Afghan national that we brought in under the Biden administration under Operation Allies Welcome, because he worked with the CIA in Afghanistan. So he was a part of a Afghan military unit that was directly partnered with the CIA, and that was confirmed by the CIA director. So when Afghanistan fell, he was a part of that large group that we tried to get out swiftly. So he's been here for years now, and we gave him refuge. And how does he thank us? He murders our freaking service members. So he's currently wounded and in custody, so he's being treated right now. Trump has called for 500 additional guardsmen to the D.C. area. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the DOJ will be seeking the death penalty. Immigration from Afghanistan and some other nations that have not yet been specified is going to be paused indefinitely. And then Afghans admitted under Biden will be reviewed, and we could potentially see a lot of them get kicked out. So I don't want to waste too much more time on that. I definitely have a lot more feelings and thoughts on that, as I'm sure you can tell. But yeah, just please be in prayer for the families. It's just too bad that the one has already lost her life, and the other hopefully is going to pull through. Anyways, so that's the headlines, I guess you could say, for today. But today I want to shift focus to the topic of today's video, which is, it is my firm belief that Christians ought to be voting in the United States, and they ought to be voting often. And before we get too into that, I want to read a couple verses that always come to my mind when I think about this topic. And we're going to start with Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27, which says, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in the power of your hand to do so." Excuse me, I apologize. Romans 13:1 says, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God." And then Matthew 22, Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." That's chapter 22 of Matthew, verses 37 through 40. So just kind of keep those in mind as we're talking about this topic today. So why do I think Christians ought to vote? Well, I have 5 reasons to give you today. I'm going to go ahead and go through them, and then we'll dig into a little bit more detail here in just a minute. So reason number 1, in the United States, voting is a right. But worldwide, it's a privilege when you look at other countries across the world. So especially when you consider history, most people have not enjoyed this privilege or this right. So we are in an extraordinarily privileged position today where the vast majority of Americans, basically, if you are 18 years old and you don't have a criminal record, you can vote. And I think you should exercise that. I think you should put a little thought into the candidates, and you need to go and cast your vote. So reason number 2, it is a way to love your neighbor, your country, and if nothing else, your children. Reason number 3, Christians are a massive group in the United States. And yes, we can debate all day about the different divisions of Christians and who is and isn't really a Christian. That's a topic for another day. But Christians broadly, at least those who self-identify as such, are still a majority in this country. And that has a huge impact. If more of us voted and voted more or less in common, we would win every single election ever. So, reason number 4, if Christians do not vote, it becomes more likely that those who disagree with us and oppose us and what we want will win, and they will enforce their policies. Enough said on that one. And finally, number 5, and this is a little bit of the hot take of the 5. Christians who choose not to vote are often being lazy, they are being neglectful, or even hateful of your neighbor, your country, and your children. There are exceptions to this. What comes to mind is if you are elderly, particularly elderly, or sick and are unable to make your way to the ballot box. But even then, there's often times that you can still participate in our system. So I think you were either being one of those 3 things, if not a combo of all 3. So why? Let's dig into it a little bit. So back up to reason number 2, which is it's a way to love your neighbor, your country, and your children. I say that because choosing good leaders, choosing good officers, good stewards of how this country and the communities in it run, or at least restricting the worst candidates, choosing, for lack of better terms, the lesser of 2 evils. It's going to determine the kind of world that your children grow up in. We may not be affected by the president on a day-to-day basis, but I guarantee you're affected by your school board on a day-to-day basis, especially if you have children. So, and local elections have the lowest turnout. So that alone should be reason to get a little bit more involved, to spend a little time researching the candidates and if nothing else, taking yourself to the ballot box, but you should ideally be trying to talk to your friends and your family to get them to go as well. If not, becoming a part of a local get out the vote group as well. So, way to love your communities. Christians are a massive group. So we're going to take a second here and we're going to break down some statistics. So, there is a group called the Cultural Research Center. Dr. George Barna created this group, from what I understand. I got a couple of reports or studies by him. I guess the first is more of a study and the second is more of a report. It's a pre and a post-examination of the 2024 election, particularly focusing on religious voters. So, going into it, 79% of Americans identified as a person of faith. Now, it's not just Christians. That's all religious backgrounds. However, I think this breakdown is going to be pretty accurate with Christians as well. So of that 79%, 51, just over half, describe themselves as likely to vote. 49% describe themselves as unlikely. And I'm sure it's not much different when you dig into Christians specifically. That is shameful. That is absolutely shameful. 50%. I would understand it a little bit if this was more of a 90-10, maybe even an 80-20. Considering the amount of people that probably legitimately can't make it to the polls, or people that are really dug into their positions that for this, that, or the other reason, they don't think it is the right thing for them to do. But 50%? There are over 260 million people in this country who are qualified to vote, more or less. The majority of those are Christians. So at least half of those are Christians. So roughly about 180 to 200 million. And 50% of those say they're unlikely to vote. And here's some of the reasons they gave. Actually, quick pause on that. Within the Christian faith group specifically, 41 million, he calls them born-again Christians, which I take to mean evangelicals specifically because they're the most likely to use that term. But 41 million Christians are expected, or were expected, not to vote. That is a huge number. 41 million. Certainly more than enough to swing any election we ever have. Out of self-identified Christians who regularly attend church services, and he identifies regular attendance as at least once a month or more, 32 million of those are unlikely to vote, including 14 million who explicitly attend evangelical churches. So this is going to be your Baptist, your non-denominationals, so on. That's just insane to me. So what are some of the reasons that they said that they don't want to vote? 68%. Again, focusing on the group of Christians now that said they don't want to vote, said they're just not interested in politics. 2/3 of that group said they're not interested. I got some questions at the end, so we'll come back to that. 57% said they dislike all major candidates. You're never going to get your perfect Christian prince. I don't know what to tell you, but you still need to make a decision. None of the candidates reflected their views. 55% said that. Okay, I'm sure you can at least find some things to agree on. I seriously doubt you don't agree on something with at least one of the candidates. 52%, just over half, believe that one vote doesn't make a difference. Objectively, that may be true, but you're a Christian. You do not get to black pill. That's not an option. So, it's decision time, bub. No black pilling. Because maybe you as an individual don't make a difference, but when you talk like that around your family members and now they don't want to go vote, and then they talk that way around their friends and now they don't want to vote, you have this ripple effect. And before you know it, 41 million Christians aren't going to go out and vote. It's a mystery how that happens, really. They think the current election is too controversial. 50% think this. 50% of this group. Freaking wah. Suck it up. You believe that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and that anyone that doesn't accept that is going to burn in hell for all eternity. But a political election is too controversial for you. Are you freaking serious right now? 48% believe the election is rigged or don't know enough about each of the candidates. The rigged thing is one thing. Again, no blackpilling. But not knowing enough about the election, about the candidates, that's just laziness. Do your research, you can fix that. 36% say that their favorite candidate can't win. No blackpilling. We've already been over that. So, after the election, he came out with a report about a week or so after. So, we had that 51-49 breakdown. Christians did slightly exceed that, so 56% compared to 51 who said they were likely to vote. 56% turned out to vote of self-described Christians. That is still abysmal. Yes, it slightly exceeded expectations. That is still terrible because, listen to this next point. Of the Christians that did not vote, 20%, 1 out of every 5, said they didn't vote because they just forgot. They just forgot or they didn't get around to it. That is bullcrap. Shame on you if that's you. You need to get the lead out of your ass and get to the polls. Make a freaking plan, dude. If that 20%, this is not going to be perfect, but let me illustrate a point here. So 56% voted, 44% did not. 9%. So 20% of that 44%, I know we're getting weird and I don't have like a screen or anything to show all this. Of that 9%, of that, I'm getting too worked up. Of the 44% who didn't vote, 20% of that is 8.8. So we're just going to round up to 9. So 9%. Let's take 9% of the 41 million that said they weren't going to vote at the beginning. Again, I know this isn't perfect. You know how many people that is? That's 3.7 million people. 3.7 million Christians said, I just forgot. Are you kidding me, man? I know if all those guys voted, they're not all going to vote for the same candidates. It more or less is probably going to be something like a 60-40 split. But even then, that is it. If we're just talking about the president, a 60-40 split of that 3.7 million voters, that is almost 750,000. That's about 740,000 almost votes. It's an 740,000 increase to the spread. So Trump won by 2.2 million. If you have almost another 800,000 voters, that increases it to a 3 million spread in the popular vote, which, depending on how that breaks down across the states, is going to be potentially a much larger impact in the Electoral College, because some of these states come down to 10,000 votes, 20,000 votes. If just a few of these who didn't go out are in Wisconsin or Arizona or, New Jersey even, who's not that far off from becoming a swing state, it takes what already was a sound victory and makes it an absolute undeniable landslide. It just blows my mind that Christians can't see why they need to go out and vote. And if you can't see, I wrote down a list of all the things that you can vote for, of all the different positions. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is all the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, the sexy one's the president. That's the one that gets all the attention. We know every 4 years it's going to be a presidential election. They're going to be having crap fights on national TV. But think of it like this. You're not just voting for that president. They're going to go and appoint a whole bunch of secretaries in all these different cabinet positions. So you're voting for an entire administration, depending on who gets into that office. You're also going to vote for your congressman. So senators are going to stay there for 6 years at a time, and they're going to be more zeroed in on the issues related to your specific state. So that's a big impact. And then your representatives in the House, yeah, they're only there for 2 years at a time, but they're even more localized to what impacts your specific communities specifically. Especially if you're from a city, that's not a very big area. So it's going to matter a lot who's in that seat. At the state level, you have governors. And usually states, I know, so okay, just out with it. I'm from Kansas, so I don't know if it's like this in every state, but we don't just vote for the governor. You also can vote for who on the national level would be part of the cabinet and that the president would just appoint. But you can also vote for your state attorney general, your treasurer. Oftentimes you can, at the very least, vote to retain or remove judges in your state courts. And you're going to vote for your state level senators and representatives, whatever they call them in your state. That's a lot of people that have a very direct impact, and usually a lot more frequently than the president does. Then you get down to the local level. So your county, you're going to have your commissioners. You're going to have your sheriffs a lot of the time are able to be elected. Sometimes even county level judges. Then you go even further into the municipal levels. You got your mayors, you got your city council members, maybe some judges. I'm not super familiar with how all the breakdowns are for the different districts and stuff for judges. But a big one that I mentioned earlier, your freaking school boards. Christians, you need to vote for your school boards. It is unacceptable. That's going to affect your kids' lives directly. How many of you guys are terrified of sending your kids to public school? Now, how many school board members have you voted for? If you are really concerned and you don't know that you're going to be able to afford to send your kid to a private school, but you've never voted for your school board members, it's time to start, buddy. Time to break that losing streak. And then you have resolutions, you have state level initiatives, local initiatives, and you got primary elections. So not just like once, but you get to help narrow down the field. You don't like the candidates who run for president? Get involved in primaries. You don't like your congressman? Freaking vote in the primary and primary him out of there, and then get a candidate you actually like in. We have so many elections, so many ways to impact your community, and these people matter. Conservatives are so bad about just wanting to be left alone, not wanting to vote, not wanting to be active. Oh, I just thought of another one. Your church. I know it's not exactly politics, but I know a lot of churches out there vote for offices. Get involved in that. If nothing else, it's just, I think the case is way stronger that a Christian ought to vote and vote regularly than the other way around. I want to hear your case for why a Christian shouldn't vote, because I think that's ridiculous. What are you spending your time doing? Are you watching the game? Are you playing video games? Are you watching TV, watching movies? You can't take 2 or 3 hours once, maybe twice a year to look up candidates or what's going on. I understand you can't always, especially in local elections, they don't always have the best information out there. But just try. I understand. I'm not saying every time you vote you have to go all the way down the ballot, but you need to do something. You need to try. If you try and you lose, at least you tried. But if you don't try at all, shame on you. You suck, man. I'm tired of freaking losing. I'm tired of just all these bad policies all the time. So, you know what? I better get to these final questions because, listen, if I haven't made sense by now, do you believe that we ought to love our neighbors by promoting good or at least restraining evil? Are you frustrated when stories break of another violent crime carried out by, district attorneys. That's another thing we vote for. Are you frustrated when stories break of another violent crime carried out by a career criminal that was let out by soft judges or district attorneys? Do you fear public schools because of the poison that they pump into our child's minds today, or at least the fact that public schools suck right now? Kids are freaking stupid. They can't read. They can't do math. The Department of Education has been an abject failure in this country. Do you care about the abortion issue? Do you want to live in a safer, more moral society that acts and governs more in line with Christian values? If the answer is yes to any of these, you need to get registered. You need to make a plan and get your ass to the polls. We'll see you next time.